Well, the time is just 9 minutes past 8 a.m. If you have just tuned in, we welcome you to the show and we kick off this morning. And as I mentioned in my introduction, the first hour of the show is going to be almost entirely dedicated to the cabinet reshuffle. And we are taking reaction from across the board. And right now, we are going across to be joined by a professor of African politics at Unisa. We're talking with Professor Kealeboga Maphunye. Professor Maphunye, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Inayat, and good morning to listeners. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, just your initial thoughts, your initial reaction, Professor Maphunye, on the cabinet reshuffle and the appointments that President Cyril Ramaphosa had made.
My initial thoughts are that this is a cabinet reshuffle that actually leads us very much yes 2024 election.
Prof, are you there?
Inayat, if you can hear me, I'm saying my...
Oh, yes. Okay, I can hear you now. Yes.
Yes. I was saying my initial reaction is that this is a cabinet reshuffle, a mini one, so to say, that is a precursor to the 2024 elections, because we know that this is the cabinet that is going to be driving the final program of President Ramaphosa and the ANC before this major election.
Yes, I think this is important to understand, and it's interesting, that you're saying that this is a cabinet that is going to take us to the 2024 election, and these have been exactly my thoughts. That have these been more political long-term view rather than looking at where we are at the country at this point in time and all the challenges that we are faced with. Does the cabinet and do these appointments have the capacity to address these challenges in the short term, Prof?
Absolutely. Your listeners and viewers might actually remember that yesterday the broadcast was supposed to be at 7 p.m. South African time. And then it was shifted to an hour later, 8 o'clock. Whilst we thought it was 8 o'clock, then they said 8:30. At 8:30, many of us were glued to the screens and were listening to the radios, nothing. It was only at 22 after that time that the broadcast came. What it tells you is that there are so many issues at stake, not just the immediate things. Of course, the immediate things like electricity cutoffs and all those things are part of what caused the delay. But there are so many things. Normally, in a cabinet reshuffle, there are behind the scenes things that ordinary citizens may be aware of, but may overlook, thinking that they don't play a role, but they actually do. One of them is the question of ideology or party political, space. We saw that it played a very, very important part because the ANC Secretary General apparently was at the venue when the president was announcing, including, that of the Communist Party. But it is not only that. We know that, COSATU also had a very, very serious influence, on the negotiations. Apart from that, there's a question of racial balancing or the race issue, which inevitably in the South African cabinet reshuffle one has to think about. Yesterday, it was a little bit subdued because we haven't seen much in terms of, race, the race card. But of course, it always plays an important part in the cabinet reshuffle. Thirdly, is the issue of gender. And yesterday, many of those who were appointed were women. Black women, for that matter, partly because of the narrative that, over the years, especially during the apartheid era, women, especially black women, were not, nowhere to be found in the political space in terms of power. And hence now the time is there to transform government, to bring, gender parity, in the top positions in politics. Lastly, it is this issue around the factions. We know that the party, the ANC, is fragmented. is facing difficulties in terms of, those who are RET, radical economic transformation, and those who are supporting, the current president. So, in that regard, cabinet reshuffle is quite likely to reflect all these things. I know, of course, many apathetic South Africans, disinterested South Africans, including leftist parties like the EFF and the ATM and the others, are saying that the president was not supposed to announce a cabinet reshuffle yesterday. He was supposed to resign. Therein lies the dilemma of President Ramaphosa and the cabinet. Hence, the delays that we experienced yesterday, and hence the cabinet reshuffle that we have. Not many South Africans will be happy about, the outcome, but this is exactly my point, that this is actually a precursor to the 2024 national elections next year.
Prof, just your thoughts on retaining the old guard. And, I'm talking of people like Gwede Mantashe. I'm talking of people like Becky Cele, Pravin Gordhan. And we know people like Dr. Dlamini Zuma as well. And, these have been the old guard. They've been through thick and thin. And just retaining them or keeping them close to the president. Now, some would argue that, when one looks at people like Gwede Mantashe, when one looks at Pravin Gordhan, for instance, in terms of the electricity crisis, and I know we've got a new Minister of Electricity now, but he got rid of someone like Lindiwe Sisulu, but still retained some of the old guard, where there are huge question marks, as far as their competence, and also in terms of just how they have managed certain portfolios, like, for instance, the whole electricity debacle that has been playing out.
In a cabinet reshuffle, you and I, as citizens, expect rationality to prevail in terms of the appointment of ministers. You have just used the word performance. In other words, we expect the president to look at ministers who are not performing according to our perceptions as the public, and we feel that these are the ministers who need to face the chop or who need to be removed. However, in politics, it doesn't work like that. In politics, the performance very much is linked to loyalty. And the people that you have just mentioned, Pravin Gordhan, Gwede Mantashe, Becky Cele, and the list goes on. Some people would have expected that they should they should be fired either on the basis of age, because many of them have, are very much, in the close to retirement, according to the age of retirement of South Africa, 65 years old. Some are even way beyond that age. And some would actually expect them to be fired or to be removed from cabinet on the basis that they have not performed, which is actually what you have alluded to. And I know that you are talking about the likes of Gwede Mantashe in terms of electricity and so on, and particularly in terms of crime and GBV, gender-based violence, which is prevalent and out of control in South Africa, as many argue. However, there's the question of loyalty. Lindiwe Sisulu might have been removed partly because her loyalty, if you looked at what happened in Nazareth last year, and in the months just before this cabinet reshuffle, that she probably would be questionable in terms of loyalty to the present, president. And some of those in her party are aware that, it looks like they are a bit sour grapes, or the grapes are sour in between her and the head of state. So in that case, she would obviously be a candidate to be removed, because Ramaphosa would need loyal ministers who, when the going gets tough, would stand with him head over heels and would, protect him. Whereas somebody who is uneasy about you, just like Lindiwe Sisulu has been behaving in the previous month, would probably, sacrifice you, and maybe, take a different turn. The same could actually be said about Nkosazana Zuma, because you remember he voted, with the opposition in terms of that report in Parliament, to the dismay and surprise of many ANC loyalists. However, I think because she has got much more political gravitas Ramaphosa chose to transfer her to another ministry, that of women, rather than taking her out. You know, the saying that it is rather better to keep them inside, doing, trouble to the outside, rather than keeping them outside and then they come and cause problems for you inside. It's just an old, political saying from the American system. So the idea is that if you use such a tactic, you keep people who might be dangerous to you close to you so that you can monitor them, rather than getting rid of them, as we saw what happened with the likes of Malema. You fire them, then they form a formidable, party and become a formidable enemy, and they come to cause serious problems for you. So, in my view, I think the president, in his reshuffle, did not actually think about the performance that you and I would, define in terms of the ministers that you have mentioned, but actually sought to reward loyalty and to keep those whom he thinks, will support him tooth and nail inside the cabinet.
Well, Prof, you make a good point. Keep your enemies close. And this is exactly what the thinking
Absolutely.
of the president has been. And just looking at the new Minister of Electricity now, we know he comes highly qualified, he is young, he is energetic, and he's got a huge task. And also coming up against seniors, sorry, like Praveen Gordhan and Gwede Mantashe. And this is going to be quite interesting because, he's coming in at an extremely difficult time, but also at the same time, he needs to make maximum impact.
I agree with you that he needs to make maximum impact. Yesterday, the president underscored the fact that these ministers must hit the ground running. He said that they must be quick to assume their portfolios and to run. Obviously, like I keep mentioning, this is in the run up to the election. We are already in the pre-election period in my view. It's normally 12 months, 18 months before a major election. So the new Minister of Electricity, Dr. Ramaphosa, yes, he's got a serious task ahead of him. I'm not so sure whether he's going to be, to be a magician. In other words, to resolve the country's massive electricity crisis and problems overnight. He might find it very, very difficult because many argue that this electricity crisis is actually an own goal by the ANC during the time of the state capture, as reflected at the Zondo Commission during the looting of state coffers and their resources during the time of the Gupta. Hence now, what is happening is actually the chickens coming home to roost. We are harvesting exactly what we have plowed or what we have sowed. So will he be able to resolve it? I am not so sure. However, it might just be a question of bringing him in to give South Africans an impression that yes, the party is going to do something. But from what I gather, there are just so many things behind this electricity issue, including sabotage, including party political factions, including they better, saying that among some in the ANC that now is our time to eat. In other words, the corrupt element within the party believe that they have to use the state resources while they're in power, because once you are out, you are not able to eat anymore. And by the way, it should be said that South Africa is not different from other African states. We post-independence in this regard, as we have seen across the board, whether it is Zimbabwe, whether it is in Tanzania, whether it's Nigeria, whether it is Ghana, Kenya, and so on, whereby a group of politicians coming in, they give an impression that they are ready to turn over a new leaf, they want to serve the country and so on in terms of the constitution, the whole political rhetoric. But in effect, what they are thinking about is lining up their pockets and filling up their stomachs. And so it is what one famous political scientist called the politics of the belly. You see this couple of politicians coming in, they want to, obviously line their pockets. And at the end of the day, they know that they are going to be out of power very soon. So the idea is to make sure that you amass as much as possible what you can get, whether it's wealth, whether it's whatever of the resources. I know some of your listeners might say, but then there are genuine ones. Indeed, there are those who want to genuinely serve the public. But in this case, I tend to think that there are a minority, a very, very small minority, because they are outnumbered by the criminal element, which is bent on pursuing possibly another, phase of state capture, because I don't think the state capture is over.
Well, Prof, very, very interesting. And politics of the belly, that's a new one to me. But very interesting analysis coming from you this morning. We certainly thank you for your time with us this morning. All the best to you.
Thank you so much. Salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Professor of African Politics at Unisa, Professor Kealeboga Maphunye with us this morning. We come back, we'll be joined by the leader of the official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, John Skenazen.